clicker? Yep, here we go. Sweet. I'm infectious, I guess. I'm a virus, you could say. I'm like Brittany. I like to walk around and get the wiggles out. But first, before I get started, I want to just thank you all for being here. This has been an amazing couple of days. This is something we've dreamt about for a really long time and never wanted to do it unless we could kind of do it our way. And hopefully we've done that. If we could real quick just give a round of applause for all the speakers yesterday, today. It's been awesome. And then the 97 floor staff and team too for making this such a great place. Last night I was told by a friend of mine that he might his new question when he gets asked to go to a conference or thinks about go to conferences, do they have a butler? So we kind of ruined a lot of use, I think, on conference locations. The montage is amazing. You've learned what to do. You've learned how to do it. You've learned lots of marketing things over the last couple days. Usually I talk about marketing when I go speak and things like that. But today I want to talk more about how to cultivate a culture that executes on marketing. How to create a culture that can help you execute everything that you want to do. And because that's all that matters at the end of the day. You could have all the knowledge of the world, but if you can't get it done, and if you don't do it, then who cares? It doesn't matter. The other thing too with marketers, I really like marketers, entrepreneurs. We just want to get it done, and we don't want more fluff and more things put on top of us to slow things down. We just want to be doers. And so I want to talk about some things that maybe have gotten in the way in the business world to stop us from being doers and marketers and ultimately executors. So first I want to talk about autonomy. I think there's nothing more important nowadays than autonomy. And in the workplace, at home, autonomy equals accountability. I'll kind of play that out as we go along and show you how that works. But the world, I really like what Seth said yesterday. The world has totally trained us to do things wrong. And I loved his analogy of school being built by industrialists to become workers. It's so true. So true. I get so frustrated at the school system with my kids because the world trains us to be micromanagers. For example, my kids, the school they go to have this. They're awesome, right? They're web 2.0. They have apps. They have things. They have this thing called School Loop. My wife and I get alerted every single day when their grades change up or down. We get alerted if they don't turn in their papers. We get alerted after the class, at 11 a.m. if they don't turn in their paper. And what does that do if my son forgets his homework? I have twin boys that are 14. They're in 8th grade. What happens if one of them forgets their homework and we get the alert at 11 o'clock? My wife's asking me what my lunch break looks like so I can swing down and drop that off. And now I'm enabling my son he not only has any, autonomy, but now I'm enabling him to forget his stuff because we're so on it that we're ruining that. So when I was a kid, I got a whole quarter to fix my grades. And my parents are in the audience right now, so they might find out some things about me that they didn't know. But I got a whole quarter to fix my grades on my own with my teacher, figure it out because they didn't know till the end of the quarter. And if I was really good, I could get to the mailbox before my mom, and I could open it up, see what was in there, and then I could prep my speech for, how are your grades? Oh, I got a D. Just kidding, I got a C-. And try to build, I learned how to pitch. I learned how to stand up for myself. But my kids are not getting that anymore. The world has totally made us hovering micromanagers, mind flayers that are just the ominous micromanagers. So it starts with our kids, but it goes all the way up to work. It goes all the way into adulthood. It hasn't changed, just like what Seth was saying yesterday. We clock in, we clock out. We have policies on top of policies. If our employees aren't doing what they should be doing, or your team members, or whoever it is that you oversee. And I want to kind of relate this. There's a lot of different people in this audience today. There's entrepreneurs, there's startups, there's VPs, executives, etc. All this applies no matter what. Just try to figure out how it applies to you. Maybe you're a one-person shop, but maybe the way you treat your subcontractors, could be changed, or your relationships with your partners, or things like that. But we kind of have this tendency to just, more. If our team is acting up, let's just take away more. We monitor. We got to a point at 97th floor, and I got a really good story about the same time where I was really, really close to employing that school loop mentality on our employees and starting to monitor, because I had a friend who ran a huge company. They were growing like crazy, and I was talking to him, and he was saying, dude, you got to come over here, check this out. I came over at lunch, and he said, dude, come to my computer, check this out. He logs in. He's like, look, I can see what all my employees are watching on YouTube right now. I can see what they're doing on Facebook. And I was like, dude, are you kidding me? That's nasty. And he's like, isn't that awesome? I can tell if they're wasting time. And I was like, you missed the whole problem. If you feel that you're at that point, you've got a way bigger problem than them chatting with their wife on Messenger, at 11 o'clock. And why is that even bad in the first place? So anyways, we got to that, he was trying to convince me. I didn't really know where to go. Luckily, we didn't go that way because that mentality is choking execution, and it's stopping us from getting things done, which is what we all want to do here. After what you've learned today, you're probably chomping at the bit to go home, get things done with your team on featured snippets or telling better stories or outreach, and all those things, and we need to get rid of all the fluff. It's a time waster. It's a money taker. It's an energy and morale robber. I heard the phrase for the first time a couple years ago, energy robber, and I really like that phrase. I like to look at things and think, is that an energy robber? Is it draining on our mentality? Is it draining on our morale? Is that something that's going to rob us of our energy in the organization? We got to remember adults are peacocks, and we got to let them fly. That's an old reference, but it's a good one. And we are adults. We don't need to be treated like kids anymore, and we need to let our team, ourselves, get out there and spread our wings and do what we want to do. So I have a story on that. Not about peacocks, but about turkeys. So I have a friend who was a huge HR, head of HR for a huge corporate company, and he got hired to run a huge turkey farm, the HR for a turkey farm. Thousands of employees. And his first meeting he goes to, they come, they're like, we're so glad you're here. We have so many problems. We want you to fix something right away. We want you to implement a new rule that our employees can only use the restroom for 15 minutes every time they go. And he was like, are you kidding me? So first of all, you're throwing me to the den. I've been here a day, and you're going to make me launch this new rule. But you're trying to tell me that you want to tell adults how long they can use the restroom. And it's that's the point that corporate and the business world has kind of got to. And so he said, no way, and they rolled it out, and he convinced them that if your issue is that your employees are using the restroom too much, and it's not because they drink bad water and have diarrhea, we don't have that problem here in America, luckily, usually. It's because they were worried they're on their phone. They're using it for breaks to be on their phones and things like that. If that's the problem you're worried about, you have a way bigger issue that starts way further than bathroom breaks. And so it's kind of been cool because I feel like I've been in the marketing world and tech world and things like that. So it's kind of turned into a little consulting role. It's kind of cool to consult for a turkey farm, I feel. But it's totally been helping them out. And they've changed a lot of things and kind of worked backwards, and I'll talk about some of those tactics. So we weren't always this way with 97th Floor. We weren't the hippie, free-loving, business people that I think some people think we are. But before we kind of made these switches, and just so you know real quick, we're a results-only work environment, which means we basically only focus on the results and nothing else. So we don't have clocking in, clocking out. We don't have rules on when you have to be in the office or not in the office. You can work from home. You can go to India for a month if that was your dream and work from India as long as you get your stuff done. That was one of our designers' dreams, to always go to India right away, so she went and lived there for a month. Before we launched that, our client retention rate was 87%, which is really good, especially in the marketing industry, but now we're in the 90s since going this way. A lot of my friends, other executives, thought the place was going to burn down and it was going to be insane. And at the same time, to make it even worse, when we switched to results only, I moved out of state. The headquarters are here. I moved to Orange County. And so they're like, dude, you're crazy. You're just going to burn that place down. What are you doing? And it's been the opposite. So our employee retention rate this last year, was 98%, almost 97 or 99%, which is insane. Our Net Promoter Score, for those of you who aren't familiar with Net Promoter Score, that's basically to our clients, how likely they would be to recommend us or refer us to other friends, was 8.3. The industry standard is 8. Now it's 9.1 since we've kind of made all these changes. So what do you got to do? Let's talk about some tactics on how to get this done. First, you got to establish clear KPIs, and then you got to let them run. What does that mean? Well, when you do that, people work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. That's from one of the best. But what happens when you do that, when you establish those clear KPIs, is you become an autonomous, data-driven organization because you focus on only the data, you focus on only the results, not everything else, instead of a dictatorship. So that all sounds great, Chris. How do we do this? We work at a huge company. Some of us, you probably aren't in a position where you can change things. Again, try to hopefully relate this to you, how this can work in your microcosm, because there's things you can do by setting an example yourself first and kind of bleed that over. But let's talk about some steps. So first, focus on what matters, which would be establishing those clear KPIs. So you have your company-specific KPIs. Real quick too. Oh, whoops, I think kind of cool. My brother took that photo. He's a photographer, and I try to throw his photos into my decks as much as possible. Company-specific KPIs. So you got your big company goals. This is the beginning of the year. We all have our new big company goals. If you're a startup, if it's just you got your big company goals. I've been talking to a lot of you over the conference of what your revenue goals this year, all that stuff. You got your big hierarchy, high-level goals. Break that down to department KPIs, what that means for each department. What does that mean for your team? What does that mean to you individually? And I'll talk about this more, how to get more specific in a second. But you need to get down to what the true KPIs are for each individual. Like for a customer service rep, and Seth Godin talked a lot about Zappos yesterday, that KPI should not be being in the office at 9 a.m. to answer the first calls. His KPI isn't to answer calls or how many calls he can answer. His KPI is how well he can answer those calls and keep them on, in Zappos' case, how long he can make those calls last. That's the KPI, is the customer service part of it, and we've kind of lost that. We all want the same thing, especially as marketers. What's really cool about being marketers is often our work is tied to the moving the needle for the business, right? What we focus on is what the business is focusing on, what the execs care about. So it's really fun. So start at the end and work backwards. So start with the house and then work your way back to the hammer and the nails. So you show, there's been studies, where if you're trying to motivate kids to learn new tools or new things, you don't say, here's a hammer, go figure it out. You say, hey, here's a house that someone built with a hammer. Now, here, go figure it out. You start at the back, you go forward. So same thing with your KPIs. Work your way backwards, break it down specifically. What does that mean to each individual? Less is more. So strip everything away, everything that is convoluting, getting those KPIs done, everything that is just causing more fluff, just get rid of it, focus on less. And then tie that into recognition. What's really good is once you establish these KPIs, you can start to recognize people more genuinely because you're recognizing them for what they're doing. You're recognizing them for actually moving the needle, actually doing work, instead of things that don't really matter, which I'll get to in a second. But there's a study done by Forbes. The top 20% of companies, with recognition-rich culture have a 31% lower turnover rate than everybody else. Clear KPIs equal clear recognition. When you have it really clear, you know what you're doing. So there's if you're familiar, well, everyone's familiar with Arianna Huffington. She's got her new Thrive Global. I heard her speak in San Francisco last year, and she's totally on this wave of all this stuff, recognizing employees, because we have this culture of kind of bragging about burnout. And like, what's the first thing, we tend to say when people come up to us? Oh, how you been, man? Oh, I'm busy. I'm so busy. And it's like, dude, I'm so important. I'm so busy. And it's like, no, really, you're an idiot. If you're that busy where you're bragging about being busy, you got a schedule problem. You need to figure out how to do things better. And it's like our culture has kind of changed, that, or we need to change that. Burnout is not a KPI. But it totally is in so many of our organizations, right? That doesn't mean there's not late nights, but don't don't bring up your team member or your colleague or whoever in front of everybody and be like, I am so proud of her. She's been in the office till 2 a.m. every night this week to get this done. It's awesome. There could be a lot of reasons why she's in at 2 a.m. Maybe she's terrible at her job, or very inefficient. But it doesn't mean there's not going to be 2 a.m. nights. So don't get rid of that. Don't think that throw that out. But let's just not judge people on it, and let's not reward people for it. Butt in seat at 8 a.m. sharp is not a KPI. So quick story. When we were in our first office, this tiny little title company. A title company used to be there. We took it over. Just a terrible office, but we loved it. It was so fun. We were just struggling and hustling and super fun. My office was right by the front door. So we were in the basement, 97th floor, and we were on 0 floor. We were -1 floor in the basement. But I was sitting in my office right here, and I had this huge window, and the stairs came down, and all the employees would go right in front of me. And that wasn't because I wanted it that way, but that was, how the office was set up, title company office before that. We had this employee who would show up 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes late almost every day, every single day. And I still hadn't made this shift yet. And it just boiled my blood. And I would get so upset. And I thought it was the biggest deal. This guy is one of the best designers, talent-wise, we've ever had in the company. He was really early on employee, and I was missing all of that. In fact, I even missed him up for a promotion because I promoted the other person who was the first in, last to leave guy, who wasn't really qualified where this other one wasn't, because I was so caught up. I was about to let this guy go. And this is all when I was, that earlier story when I went to meet my friend and he was monitoring all his employees and thought it was so cool that he was in the Hunger Games and all this stuff. And so I was at this cusp of, trying to figure things out. We're growing like crazy. And I'm about to let him go, and then I started to think, dude, his work is insane. His work is awesome. It's exactly what we need. It's exactly what we want. Why would I let this guy go? So I brought him in, and I'm talking to him. The reason he was late every day, he lived kind of far away because of affordability. He was helping his wife with his kids every morning. He was helping his wife get his kids situated because he was leaving her while he was going to go to work. And I'm about to let this guy go, who's an awesome KPI getter-doner. He's getting done the things that matter. And but because he's such a good family guy and willing to risk his job to help his family, he's about to lose the job. So that's kind of the break. That was a camel on the back. So needless to say, we didn't let him go, and he's still with the company, and it's a great story. It was kind of there. But anyways, back to recognition. When the KPIs are clear and your team knows what they should do, your colleagues, your contractors, anybody you're working with, whatever stage you guys are in, that peer-to-peer recognition is where it's at. So you need to start from top down, leadership, things like that. But if you can get to a place where peer-to-peer recognition is happening, where colleagues are recognizing each other, there's no backbiting, things like that, it works really well. And having the clear KPIs will get you there because it just makes it so simple and makes it so smooth. So the next step let's talk about leadership for a little bit, would be the reverse pyramid of leadership. So stop making everything about you, stop having all the reports come to you, and all that stuff, and instead make it about them. Establish those clear KPIs, and then support them. Give them everything they need to get what it is that you want them to do done. Is it more training? Is it more, whatever it is, have clear communication and figure out what it is. Do not become this person that the world's trying to make us be. Get out of their way and help them out. So some things we do at 97th floor, we have a book club once a month where we pick a book, we read it as a company, and then we'll talk about it. It's been amazing. It's been really, really cool. We also have like a library kind of policy where if you want to check out a book that has to do with anything kind of related to what we're doing, entrepreneurship, business, things like that, you bring it to us, we'll buy it, you can read it first, and then we put it back in the library for the company for other people to have. We have conference budget where people can go to conferences, hopefully with butlers, and go, get that experience. Trainings, certifications, anything at all. And then also an environment where employees feel safe to come to you and ask you what they need to get their job done better. Because hopefully, just like Seth talked about yesterday, you're cultivating a culture that doesn't have a fear of failure. Also, lastly on leadership, please don't be this, right? Do not have a fever for more meetings. I should have brought a cowbell, but yes. But that is such a big problem in the business spaces, in our space as well, is just meetings on top of meetings on top of meetings. So I have an experiment for you to try, or to pitch, or whatever it is you'd like to do. I want you to get one meeting a week. If you're a leader, hold one meeting a week. Or if you have a team and you feel comfortable that you can bring it up. One meeting a week that's mandatory. So we at 97th Floor, we really don't have any meetings that are mandatory, but it takes a while to get there, and I think some bigger organizations and things like that, it might not work. But let's start with one meeting a week that's mandatory. You can have other meetings, but don't make them mandatory. And so you could say, hey, I want to have a meeting, I want to talk about this, you want to do this. Don't make it mandatory. And if no one shows up, you probably shouldn't have had that meeting. Or if one or two people show up, you probably shouldn't have that meeting. But you cannot get upset at people for not showing up to those non-mandatory meetings. That is not, again, a KPI. Butt in seat is not a KPI. If they're getting the work done, and if that's going to take away from getting the work done, then don't have those meetings. Or if it's something that's urgent and you need to get done before a meeting, don't wait till Thursday to talk about it. Talk to your team before. That's the whole purpose of Slack and all this other stuff, is let's get it done now. And get it done before if it's important. So I think that's something that's really helped us a lot in 97th Floor. I was definitely having meeting fatigue for a long time, and it's something that we've done really well. Okay, lastly, we need to be A players. So it's kind of funny when Wayne started to talk about A players and A player mentalities at our company. I didn't really catch on to it that much. I didn't really think I was like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Everyone should be an A player. But it's kind of funny because when we talk about it or go places, people love it. They love the concept. So, really what it is, you want to be the best of the best. So this starts from the interview process. From very early on, the people you're picking, you want to make sure you're asking questions that are going to help you decide whether they're an A player or not. Or if you're not in a position where you're interviewing the new people, when they come on your team, try to figure out what type of player they are and how they're going to help and where they're going to fit in. One rule of thumb we have is with compensation, if that employee got a better offer, would you match it? If so, match it before they get the offer. Pay them that now because you don't want to lose them. You don't even want to have that be a conversation. You don't even want the greener pastures to be part of it. So make it a non-issue. Again, not all of you are in this position for compensation, but you are on how you treat the person or things like that, and you can kind of relate that to you. Second, if maybe you wouldn't be willing to match it, then figure out, does that mean they need more support to fix that situation on why you wouldn't? What else do they need? Or maybe they're just not, took a slide out, but maybe they're not a good fit, square peg in a round hole. Maybe it's just not a good fit, and that's fine. Not everybody is a good fit, but if you have that mentality when you're making decisions, you can get to that a lot quicker, which is better for everyone, for the employee that's not a good fit, so they can find a place that they are, for the team, etc. And then, most importantly, you need to be an A player. Again, whether you're a leader or not, if you are not an A player, how can you expect your team members around you to be an A player? What I really like about the results-driven work environment is it forces you to be an A player, because now everything's under a really healthy microscope, because everything's really clear in what you should be focusing on. And your team knows what you should be doing, and you know what you should be doing. And it becomes kind of this self-policing environment that's really, really healthy, because people kind of know that they don't fit in, maybe even before you need to make it aware. Or more importantly, people can kind of feel that they need to pick it up because everyone else is getting their KPIs done, and it inspires them to be better. Going this way inspired me to be a way better employee of 97th Floor and team member, all that, because I felt so much more good pressure, honest pressure to do that, because I was asking everybody else to do the same. And it didn't matter if I showed up first or left late or things like that. That's, we got rid of all that stuff, so it becomes really easy on what to focus on. And again, that will lead to you becoming a autonomous organization that kind of runs itself. Let's not forget, we're all peacocks and we got to fly. And autonomy equals accountability. And then I wanted to talk about kind of, again, how this has changed our culture and how it's been so good, because so many people still think I'm crazy when I talk about everything that we've done and kind of where we've come. So 100% of our current 75 employees agree with or strongly agree with these following statements. We did a survey with our company, and we've been really, really adamant on our employees being very transparent and they can say what they don't like, and they do often, and it's a really good environment. But I mean, imagine, this is like a dream come true when I first saw this come through. But employees in my organization take the initiative to help other employees when the need arises. I'm able to make decisions affecting my work. Employees treat others with respect. I'm satisfied with the culture. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, all of these, 100% of our employees agree with or strongly agree with. And it's been something that's been really amazing for me. It took me a really long time to wrap my head around kind of this, creating this culture that executes. But it's been something that's been really good for us. And I've been really privileged to help for us to lead and help other companies do the same. The fact that we're a marketing agency and we're helping turkey farmers figure out how to have better work environment is something that's really dear to my heart, and I think that's really cool. That's kind of what Wayne talked about on his first day of even though you're in marketing and sometimes you feel like we're just making companies that make money more money, we can actually make a change and make a difference to these people's lives, and then it trickles out and it changes everything. You can change the world by having a culture like that. That's it for me. I'm going to cut out early because we got a lot to go for skiing and things like that. Some of you are super excited to go skiing. Some of you, like me, who have snowboarded their whole life, are deathly afraid to go skiing. But we got a lot to go over, so I wanted to keep it short and just kind of really focus on kind of what we're doing and how, hopefully give you some insights and inspiration on how you can run your teams better, on how you can run what you're doing better, and hopefully just execute. I mean, if anything, what I'd want you to take away, and it's always kind of been my motto for us at 97 Floor, people ask us what differentiates us, is that we're doers, we're executors, we get it done, we just do. And I'm hoping that's what you take away from Seth, from everybody this week, is just go get it done. Don't focus on the other stuff. Remember that there's footprints on the moon. And just, don't worry about the other stuff, and just go get done what you want to do. And hopefully that can inspire you guys to have an awesome 2018. Thank you so much. So we can do a little Q&A if we want, or Amy can come up here and tell us how we're going to get started on skiing. But does anybody have any questions on anything? Yeah? Have you talked to her about it at all? Not like, hey, you talk too much, you're a blabbermouth, but like, have you at least had conversations just about just trying to get things done quicker, or things like that?
This year, I told her that our goal is to function more autonomously, and that I wanted to have more responsibility and take charge, and say this is what we need to do, and then just come to me with a solution. So that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Yeah. So it'll take a while. But start with just things you say when you talk to her and you're like tasking her on, whatever it is you're tasking her on. And be like, look, remember, I trust you. I trust you to go get it done. If you want to just come run it by me real quick or things like that, but go get it done. Come tell me after you get it done. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to talk to you about it, get it done. But we got to really move on this. Let's really get it done. I got, so-and-so's waiting on this, or things like that. And just kind of maybe a reminder that you trust her. Maybe it's just, we got to undo so much stuff. Just like Seth talked about, and a lot of people, I think, feel the more they talk and the more they're involved, that's what proves their self-worth as an employee. And so maybe a reminder that her self-worth is in the doing and not in the talking about it. You don't have to do it in a rude way, but just like, look, I trust you're in this position for a reason. Let's go get it done, because I know you're the best to get it done in that position, and then we can learn from there and go from there. Hopefully that helps. It'll take a while. People have that innate thing to just always have something to say. And that's great, but let's talk about it, have her have a ton to say after she starts it instead of maybe before. Yeah.
In regards to KPIs, right? So you've got the execs that are really stoked on KPIs.
Oh, yes.
Bullish, right?
Yes.
Then you've got the department heads, you've got teams, and then you've got the employees that are a little bearish because they don't want to commit too much.
Yeah.
Because then they're held accountable for that.
Uh-huh.
How do you deal with that so that we're not like, we're encouraging them to do it, but we're not like, we can't start this low. I mean, we've got to be.
One, it's also got to work on the way back up to make an environment that's friendly to maybe them missing KPIs a little bit. But as long as as long as they were getting there close, or that's what they were focusing on, you got to take the fear out of the way. Otherwise, you're right. They're always going to set especially if you're trying to give them autonomy and say set your own KPIs and stuff. One, I would probably have them set their own KPIs, and then you help nurture that and get it to where you think it should be for the company. And you can always tie it back to that, like, well, for the company to get where we want to go, we need to maybe move that up a little bit or things like that. But two, I think they need to not be afraid of, they need to not be afraid so much too. Otherwise, they're just going to always set the bar low to kind of be status quo. And you can do that by setting an example on what you're doing too. Be super transparent. If you're a leader, be super transparent on what your KPIs are for yourself, what you're going to do, and when you're not, or when you're tweaking or pivoting or things like that, be very transparent about it. Be very human and let them know you're making mistakes and things like that. And I think that will slowly cultivate a safer place for that too. Yeah.
Great. I got a lot of inspiring ideas out of that. So thank you.
Yeah.
The survey at the very end is really interesting to me. I'm curious about what you do with the data, because what you showcased were the ones that everyone strongly agreed with. But there must have been some that didn't land where you wanted them to land. So what kind of follow-up actions do you have planned to do with statements that whatever you wish they didn't?
We pay them off with Bitcoin. So that's the first step. Paxton could probably answer that better. He's the one that runs all that. Paxton.
Yeah, so we run the survey every 6 months, and it's not an anonymous survey, but we work really carefully with employees to make sure that they feel comfortable saying whatever they want to say. So we do get some negative responses sometimes. So we'll sit down with them and discuss like what their thinking was behind that answer, what they think we can improve, and every section has an open comment section, so they can say whatever their thoughts are behind each of those topics. So basically the goal is address whatever needs to be addressed, whether that's an individual or an organizational correction.
You have a follow-up to that or anything?
Sometimes when people are giving feedback and they feel like the feedback isn't acted on or doesn't actually prompt change, it inhibits them from being involved or engaged in future rounds of feedback. So do you worry about the burden it puts on you, or the fact that you may not be able to maneuver to provide the kind of resolution or closure that someone might need in your piece of feedback?
Hold on real quick. Can you guys hear? Can't hear? You can? Okay. He's saying he's worried about, if you don't act on all the negative feedback, does that make employees for future surveys and things shut that off where they stop giving feedback because they feel like they're not listened to?
Yeah, and then I've actually seen that same thing. We initially made the mistake of just kind of surveying, saying this is good feedback, this maybe we're not going to act on, and then the results started to get more positive, but it's artificial, right? Because if I'm not being listened to.
What's the point? Yeah.
So then we started to create a feedback loop where we take that correction, we say, great, let's talk about how we can solve that, and then we follow up every 6 months when we meet again and say, here's what it's been done over the past 6 months thanks to your feedback. It helps them feel like they're a lot more involved in the organization.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So with KPIs, where there might not be a baseline stuff, I know we've talked about that a little bit, but you have somebody siloed off doing one thing so you can't even really compare them against another. How do you deal with that where you're not micromanaging them because they do need, like, you don't know if they're not like an 8 to 5 type of deal, like maybe they could be doing way more than they're doing, but you have no clue without like.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you guys didn't hear, if you have someone that's kind of siloed and you don't really have a precedent for what their KPI should be, how do you really help them reach their potential to focus on, the most that they can achieve? So 1, 2, don't get in the habit of comparing employees to other employees. I'm not saying you were, but this is just bringing that up in my head. Because again, everyone's got to have different things. You might have the total schmoozer employee that says hi all the time, high fives you in the hall, and you might let that get in your head that the other person that likes to have their headphones on and get work done isn't somehow, as engaged. So don't ever do that. I'm a big proponent of that because of having twins. My kids have been bottlenecked their whole life of which one's a bad one, which one's a good one, who's the athletic one, who's not. They're identical too, and I get it all the time. We used to go in to meet with teachers, and it's like, well, Braxton does all this, but Cove, he has a tendency to not do this, and we learned early on, put him in separate classes. But anyways, employees are the same. We're all different. Figure out how that siloed individual's KPIs tie back to whatever it is that they're part of. So if it goes, how does it tie into the company goal? How does it tie into the rest of the team? How does it tie? Where does it has to tie in somewhere? Otherwise, what are they working on? What are they moving forward? And figure out if you feel like if whatever they're setting or what you're holding them to is enough to kind of move that needle and do that. Probably going to take a lot more of you talking with them and understanding them and things like that to kind of figure out what they can be capable of. And, you'll need to nurture that more in the beginning, and then it will kind of become its own thing, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
What are the specific questions you ask interviews to make sure you hire?
Super good question. So I am a terrible interviewer. I'm one of the worst. I am terrible. Wayne and Paxton could answer that really well. They're very good, devil in the details. I haven't interviewed someone for a job in a really long time. That's one of probably my favorite accomplishments that I've created for myself, is not having to deal with that. But Wayne, what would you say are some good A-player questions? Or things where you kind of help to weed that out early on?
Yeah, so my approach on Paxton probably takes a little bit more into like their knowledge of whatever position it is, and anyone else, the department head is caring about that. I care more about who they are as a person, because anything else, whether they're a designer, copywriter, whatever, we can teach them. We can send them conferences and trainings. So it's more of a person. One of my personal favorite questions is it has to deal with, if you can support, any charity or an organization like help change the world, the people that can have something quick on the top of their head that shows that they're thinkers about how they can help people in the world at all times. And that's huge for 97 floors, people that aren't selfish and only do a good job for themselves but aren't making the entire company better.
Does that help? I mean, you'll figure it out, or maybe talk to your A players you already have, and just try to figure out those personality traits and the things that you like about them and why they're so well in your organization, and then trickle that down too. Also, we have a lot of our employees involved in the interview process, not just Wayne and Paxton, like Wayne said. So get those A players involved too, because it's easy for an A player to spot another A player. Yeah.
In addition to what you've already shared, would you share any advice with us to help motivate employees who maybe are not inherently self-motivated?
It's a really good question. So how can we help motivate employees who maybe aren't inherently self-motivated? So you gotta, get to know them and figure out maybe what be the root of that. I really think having continuous conversations where you're reminding them that they're there for a reason, you picked them for that position for a reason, and you list all those skills, all those qualities of them, and that you trust them to get it done. That can remind them that you really do have confidence in them. Maybe they don't have confidence in themselves, but you have confidence in them. And it kind of puts maybe a healthy pressure on that too, because you're letting them know, look, I chose you to do this, and I want you to do it. Also, I would say, some people, that's a really hard thing to teach someone to do, and some people are just born with it, some people aren't. But I think, constantly reminding them of your confidence in them. I also like what Seth said. I'm a big proponent of fake it till you make it as well. And so maybe talk to them about it. Like if they're kind of getting down on themselves, or they don't have a lot of confidence, it's like, dude, we have confidence in you, so why don't you just fake it? You don't even believe in it. Just borrow my confidence in you for a while and pretend that you feel the way I feel about you, and things like that. There's a lot more personal things there you probably need to work out. That's not like a cookie cutter answer, but hopefully that kind of helps. Yeah.
So, kind of in a tenure rally, this is good for almost everybody here in the U.S. It's easy to build culture when there's a lot of money going around.
Yeah.
And it's not making cuts. The second, let's say this Salt Lake City tech boom, your LA clients, start to cut back, things get tougher for you guys.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen in the next 5 years.
For sure.
We're gonna have this forever. So, I love all this culture talk and lasted 7 years, but let's watch when
Yeah.
things get different. How do you maintain a culture when you're Xing some of your, have to X some of your employees, pull back benefits, stuff like that?
Yeah, totally. That's a really good question, and I do agree with you. It's probably coming as well. What do they say with sports? Like the teams never learn anything when they're winning; they learn when they're losing. I think being very transparent and upfront on what the company is doing good, not doing good, before that happens, and being willing to make hard changes, like kind of already build that into it. I think you'll be okay. When you got to let people go. Because maybe just the economy in general or things like that. I really like, there's really good stories on how to help you with that in Ben Horowitz's book on Hard Things About Hard Things, because he talks about how, they'd raise all this money and hire like thousands of people, and then he'd have to cut 400 people, and how to maintain the culture. And he was really good being very personal, being very transparent. The leaders have to be there. The leaders have to be present. The leaders have to be, not send out an email and then not show up for 2 weeks because they don't want to be there. And you gotta, you just gotta be honest. I think the only way people will survive that is by being really honest as to what the reasons are. Is it so we can just pay our execs more money by cutting you because our margins are a little thinner, or is it, a real reason that has to do with things? So I don't really have a perfect answer to that, because you're right. We have, we are very lucky right now with where we're at, but that's a really good answer. But I would think it would all come back to transparency and honesty, and why you are doing what you're doing, why the cuts. Show them the numbers too. We show our employees the numbers. They know the margins. Each team kind of runs their team like their own business, so they know their own margins and can run it that way. They know when things are getting thin because they're losing clients, or or vice versa. So I think showing the numbers and being really transparent with that would help a lot too in that situation. Any other questions? I think that's about it.